And one last thing about time, to highlight how malleable it is. As I'm recording this video right now, I'm really talking to you, who's watching the video, as if you were watching it right now. Now, behind the scene, I'm just recording the video. By the time I edit it and put it online, a few hours, if not a few days, would have elapsed. And a few hours, if not a few days, weeks, months, even years, perhaps, would have also passed before you watch this video. Yet, you will have the impression that I'm talking to you in real time, whereas all you're watching is me from the past talking to you. But it doesn't change anything. You have the perception that it is your present moment. I will just leave you on this one to ponder the complexity and the magic of time. Welcome to The Man Who Kept Dying. In today's video, we are going to talk about time. Time is video number 2 out of the last 3 videos I want to make in relation to the novel, The Man Who Kept Dying. If you haven't already done so, I would suggest that before watching this very video, you go and watch the video about reincarnation, because it will help in relation to this video. Time. It is a very complex topic, and one that could take hours to cover if we were to really dive deep into the concept. So I'm going to try to do my best to condense that information in just a few minutes. In the novel, I dedicate a full chapter about time. And I had really good fun writing this chapter because, from my understanding and the information from the spirit side, and the fact that time does not exist on the spirit side, and that it is an illusion on the human side as well, I imagined all the possibilities that we could have if we were to consider that time does not exist. And in order to keep this video simple, I would like to keep it to 3 main concepts around time. 1, there is only the present moment. 2, time has a degree of elasticity. 3, everything has already been written. But before we go into that, and to give you a bit of context, let me read you a small excerpt from The Man Who Kept Dying, during which it is explained to Mika how the concept of time actually operates. The voice continued, its tone buoyant. In the physical realm, time is an illusion that contextualizes the notion of past, present, and future. But in reality, there is only the present moment and the next possibility you choose in that moment. When you compare one action against another you have previously taken, you have one point of reference in what you call the past, but seen from the present moment. The same applies when you envisage an action in the future. You create a point of reference ahead of you, also seen from the present moment. Conversely, there is no notion of past or future in the spirit world. The present moment is the only constant. As you have noticed on multiple occasions since your arrival, when in spirit form, every action or thought brings forth an instantaneous creation, rendering time and space inconsequential. From a spirit's perspective, a physical life is a succession of present moments with different paths to choose from, whether consciously or not. Mika argues with that concept. You're telling me that time doesn't exist. Yet, when in my body, I have observed the cycles of night and day, the revolutions and rotations of the planets, the phases of the moon and their impact on tides, agriculture, and many other elements. The reply Mika receives is the following one. Good observation, my dear one. It is because all of these elements have already been written, so to speak. You see, the secret is that the illusion of time is moving through you. Have you not noticed the elasticity of time before? When absorbed in a pleasurable activity or profound meditation and time passed faster than your usual perception of it. From your point of view, you had spent no more than 15 minutes on your activity, when in fact, 1 full hour had elapsed. Time was simply traversing you faster. I know you have also observed that the opposite is equally true. So let's review all those elements, because in this very short snippet of conversation that is part of a large chapter, a lot is being covered already. Point number 1, there only is the present moment. It is something I understood once I got more into doing all the spiritual research I did following my near-death experience. A constant piece of information from the spirit side is to be in the present, live the present moment. And I am someone who in the past, who was constantly focused on what's ahead, what's in the future, always mapping out all of the possibilities and trying to focus my attention on a preferred scenario. I would spend hours sometimes just thinking about a potential meeting, a potential conversation, what I would say, how the other person would react, what they could say back, what I would have to say in reply to that, and so on. And you can see how much energy and time was actually being spent preparing for events that I noticed most of the time were not even unfolding in the way I'd anticipated. So, one thing I have learned after my NDE was to simply be more anchored in the present moment and not think too much about the future. What I've realized as well, by being in the present moment, is you don't restrict your futures, because you have many potentials. If you focus your attention on a particular future, you are restricting yourself to all the other options that may actually be more to your advantage or in your favor. And also, indirectly, you're creating a resistance. By being in the present moment, things will unfold the way they are supposed to, based on your state of consciousness. The exact same happens with regards to the past. Now, I'm not someone who's too nostalgic about the past, but I know a lot of people who dwell on the past constantly. And it serves no purpose. The past is the past, as described in the novel, is just something that has happened, and you can reflect on it from the present moment. It doesn't mean you should not learn from your past mistakes or your past experiences, but constantly being in those past experiences actually doesn't generate a positive outcome for your own future. By standing clear in the present moment, you do realize that you are not defined by your past anymore, and that you can change the course of your life and your future in real time. And that is something that is very important. I cannot emphasize enough the importance of grounding yourself in the present moment and not worry too much about the future and not dwell too much about the past. When you do that, one thing you will notice that happens quite quickly is the elasticity of time. And it might be a strange thing to say or to realize, but actually, to a certain extent, time is malleable. Let me explain. You've all heard about the expression, I started my day on the wrong foot. And you've all had friends or relatives or siblings who've told you one day, I've had such a bad week this week, or I'm having a really bad day. Once you anchor yourself in the present, you realize that you never have a bad day. You never have a bad week. You might have a bad 5, 15 minutes, half an hour. You might have a succession of events that are not very much of your liking, but they don't define the rest of your day. For example, in January this year, I've had a month where a lot of things went wrong. And you could label it as a bad month, but at the end of it, all situations got resolved. And what was interesting about that time period as well is I wasn't the only one noticing that. People in my families were also facing challenges. So it seemed like there was more of an energy redefining moment, so to speak. But the point I'm trying to make is that never let a bad moment define the rest of your day. And the exact same thing with a good moment. Sometimes you may want to hold on to that good moment, saying, I don't want things to change. They will change. Change is the only constant. It's inevitable. So flow by being in the present moment. Once you understand how time works a bit more, you can also start playing with it. In a way, you can expand and contract it. And it's all about your mindset. For example, most days, I don't set an alarm. I would wake up most days when I need to wake up, when my body has rested enough. And I would always have plenty of time before my working day starts. Now, if I can anticipate that I'm a bit too tired and that I may oversleep, then I would put an alarm, of course. But that is to say that if you also trust your body and tell your body, please wake me up at whatever time you wake up in the morning, you're very likely to wake up at that time or around that time. Give or take a few minutes. Also, stop saying, I'm always late, because it is exactly what you will manifest. You will always be late. As soon as you start working against time, you will find that time works against you in return. Everything is a mirror effect. So the more you take your time, the more time you have. I know it seems very counterintuitive because you might have half an hour to finish a task. If you rush through that task, constantly looking at the clock, you're going to feel the pressure of time and you're not going to be able to achieve it within the imparted time frame, or if you do, there will be at the cost of a lot of stress. You could look at it the other way around and say, well, I've got half an hour to finish that task. In half an hour, I will be finished. And guess what? Most of the time you will. Again, give or take a few minutes. But if you don't put pressure on yourself about time, then you will notice that time works in your favor. Also, you might have noticed, I'm not wearing a watch. I can wear one on occasions, but I'm not obsessed with time to the point where I need to check the time all the time, pun intended, of course. And to give you a bit of a context with how time works and the fact that you are able to expand or contract it at will, it is because, contrary to the popular belief that we are moving through time, it is the exact opposite that is happening. Time is moving through us. So your consciousness is throttling the speed at which time goes through it. If you want to experience something fast, it will be fast. If you want to experience something slower, you can slow the experience that you have of it. But in order to do that, you need to really be in the present moment and to really be conscious about what is happening and how you want to go through the experience. The last point is about the fact that everything has already been written. As mentioned by Mika in the novel, we have a set of parameters that seem to be predetermined. So the revolutions and rotations of the planets, the cycles of the moon, the tides, and many other parameters that we can see on a daily basis. It is because there is a common set of parameters, so that all souls can come and experience a common ground. This helps with anchoring ourselves into that physical reality and having those common parameters, so that we can have a shared experience together at a soul level. Because in the spirit world, you can create whatever dimension you want at will, and you don't have to share it with anybody else. You can, but you don't have to. On Earth, there is a common set of parameters. You come here, different souls. Imagine it is a bit like playing an online game. You all connect to the server and you all meet up there and play the game. This also leads to a great question of free will versus determinism. Do we have total free will? Or is everything already determined? As I've said earlier in the video, everything has already been written, but you have free will within that story. Imagine that at every moment you have billions of possibilities in front of you. And for example, if I raise my right hand, then my left hand, then pinch my earlobes, was it already written that I would do so at the time of recording this video? Or was it just my free will that allowed me to do that? Well, the answer is both. I have the capability to raise my right hand, my left hand, and pinch my earlobes whenever I want. Whether I choose to do it or not is my free will. So there are parameters that are already defined, and then you navigate your way through those parameters with your free will. When it comes to larger life events, that becomes a bit harder. Essentially, the way I see it is from the present moment, you can align yourself to a multitude of futures. And depending on your state of consciousness, they're going to be more or less positive, more or less negative. In a way, you are choosing, and it's important to choose that consciously, which will be the topic of the next video on enlightenment. But if you trust your intuition, you will be able to go onto the path that you've defined for yourself in life. Lastly, and where I had a lot of fun in the novel with the concept of time, was to imagine the endless possibility not being bound by time could bring. Let me explain. For example, today, my consciousness is into that body, the body of Vincent. And I'm living my life through all my experiences. I've had a near-death experience. I decided to write a novel following that NDE, and I'm doing the promotion of that very novel right now. But what I imagine in the novel is that it is very possible that I'm just borrowing that body of Vincent. And because everything has already been written, the body of Vincent already exists, but another soul could come, borrow that physical body too, and lead a completely different life. And in that life, that person will never go through a near-death experience. And for example, I'm completely rubbish at music in this life. So that other soul that comes and embodies as Vincent could actually live a life where that soul's a musician. And instead of being slim, is actually quite bulky because it is doing bodybuilding and so on. The endless possibilities don't even stop there. Because imagine that you could redo your life over and over and over again, just to test if you could take a different path and explore a different scenario. So I too could decide to come back in that specific body, but then say, I want to learn music, and be really adamant from a very young age that I need to learn to play the piano, the guitar, and so on. That could happen too, just to see if it leads to a different outcome. Will I still go through the ND, or will I not go through the ND? Good question. I want to see. I go and have that lifetime once more, and several times actually if I wanted to. But take it even one step further. Imagine, for example, that I say to my better half, hey, you know, sometimes it's a bit difficult living with you. And she would say the exact same thing to me. Of course, we love each other. But one thing I could say on the other side is, hey, why don't you be me and I'll be you? So I embody as you, you embody as me. Different consciousness, different lives, different scenario. And you get to see what it's like from the other's viewpoint. You could do the same with your parents, with your siblings, with your friends, with relatives, and so on. Can you imagine all the endless possibilities that it brings? And also, perhaps, that is the reason why sometimes we have what we call déjà vu. How many times have you had that? Personally, at least once a month, I would have a déjà vu. And I can never be too sure if it is because I'm reliving this life once more, or if it is because I know very well the path I'm supposed to be on, and I'm just now experiencing it, and therefore it's a confirmation that I am on the right path. But the déjà vu sensation is always a very troubling one, because at least for me, it really makes me question why this moment is so familiar, and I'm pretty certain I've already lived it. I know this video perhaps was going a bit in all directions. I was trying to keep it as simple as I could with regards to all the possibilities around time. I'm very curious to also hear your view about time, if you think it can be manipulated or if it can be tailored to your needs. And in conclusion, I would say, what is important with regards to time is to be in the present moment, to listen to your intuition, because that will help you make sure you're on the right path for yourself and your own experience, and not think too much about the future or dwell on the past. Because when you stop doing that, you can actually become a master of time, and time will actually start to serve you as it should. I hope you enjoyed this video. The next one will be about enlightenment, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. Until next time, be conscious, my friends.